Growing up in the early 90s, I was a huge fan of Batman, and I still am to this day. My favorite Batman being, of course, the Michael Keaton Batman. Probably because that's what I grew up with, but it's also just, to me, still the best Batman. I could make that argument, I think. I know there's some other strong contenders out there. Christian Bale did a great job. Some people really like the Ben Affleck Batman. To me, the Michael Keaton Batman and the world that Tim Burton created with his Batman and Batman Returns movies were just amazing, and still to this day are some of my favorite Batman movies, if not my favorite. That being said, I'm also a big fan of video games, so of course I wanted to play a Batman video game. And the best one that I had that I still enjoy to this day was Batman on the NES by Sunsoft. That was a great side-scrolling action platforming game that was very similar to Ninja Gaiden. Of course, nowadays we have great Batman games like Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, where you can just really lay the beat down on enemies and really just feel like you're really Batman.
Riddler has Catwoman. Tell me why.
I don't know anything, I swear. I tied her up and left her inside.
Why? What's Nigma's play?
Of course, we had Batman video games, as I mentioned before, when I was growing up, but they're nothing like the games we had today. In fact, if you really wanted to lay the beat down on bad guys and really feel like Batman, there was one game that really did a great job of letting you do that. And it's one of the very few Batman beat-em-ups that I think just really show how vicious Batman can be. And that would be Batman Returns on the Super Nintendo. So Batman Returns on the Super Nintendo was released in 1993, and it's basically a Final Fight game to its core. If you're familiar with Final Fight, it's a side-scrolling, lets your character walk left and right and kind of up and down to beat up bad guys and interact with the environment. And it's, classic Final Fight style, but what makes it better, in my opinion, is you're Batman. And the cool thing about this game is it includes a lot of the, Tim Burton-esque style in its, art and its pixel animation and just the art style that they went with. It has a very Tim Burton feel. You got the snow coming down. You've got Tim Burton actual Batman music playing, which is epic. Just take a listen to some of this music. This is straight from the movie. It sounds really great. Yeah, so that music was pretty awesome. You gotta admit, great soundtrack for a Super Nintendo game. But the game actually starts off in Gotham City, and you're fighting the Penguin's Red Triangle gang. So these are mostly just made up of clowns. You've got thin clowns, fat clowns, clowns on motorbikes, clowns on stilts, and certain clowns do different things. You've got one clown that shoots a bazooka, and the other one that throws dynamite. And it's not much enemy variety when looking at it in that way. But at the same time, there really wasn't that many enemy varieties in the movie either. So it's kind of accurate, honestly. So you can't really expect it to have too many crazy enemies that didn't even exist in the movie. But there is enough here to keep it going and keep it interesting. So they do give you a good bit of options as far as combat goes. So you have your basic punch button, you have a jump button. You can jump and kick, or you can jump and then press down and the attack button and kind of spread your cape out and just, land on enemies and knock them to the ground, which is really useful sometimes. If you get right up on an enemy, you can pick them up, and then you can have the choice of throwing them down or throwing them up. And a lot of times when you're throwing them up, you can actually throw them into a wall or into a pane of glass or something like that. It's just really brutal how you can pick people up. And you can even pick up two people at the same time if you walk up on both of them. You have a batarang that you can throw, and a lot of Batman games, the batarang is, an item that you only have so many of. But in this one, you have unlimited batarangs, which is a nice change. You also have a grapple hook that you can switch to, and that'll allow you to not only reach different parts of the level, which is kind of required for navigating some of these levels, but you can also shoot it in the air and then swing on it to kick people and knock them off their feet. Now this is a cool move and it helps you get out of certain situations, but in classic Final Fight style, it does take some of your health, a very small amount whenever you use this move. You also have a guard button, so you can actually block a lot of your enemies' attacks, and it takes like 50% of their damage or more that they usually do to you off, which is really useful in some of the boss fights. Another thing you can do is you can press the jump and attack button at the same time, and he'll do like a cape swirl, which will knock people back and do a significant amount of damage. There's also something called test tube, as you can see in the top. I have 3 of those, and that's essentially a flashbang grenade style attack, but it knocks people off their feet. It'll kill them if they're weaker enemies, or it's a good way to finish off a multitude of enemies if you have them already at lower health. It's kind of like a get off me attack. So if you're getting overwhelmed with the amount of enemies attacking, you can just throw down that test tube. A screen will flash white, and then you'll be okay. Another attack you have is like a jump kick, or you can do a kind of a jump, and then if you press down in the attack button, he'll spread his like cape out and land on the enemies, and that's a really good way to knock enemies down. And you can kind of spam this attack sometimes, but it is risky because if you get hit, you get knocked backwards and land on your back, and then you're open to more attacks. Some levels in this game kind of transition to a different gameplay style, and it caught me off guard because this level here transitions into a more linear path. As you notice, you have less movement. You can only go side to side, and also from a distance, all of your attacks that you normally, normally your punch button is your punch button, but in this one, the punch button is a batarang that you throw. So any enemy that's at a distance, you'll be throwing batarangs, and then as soon as they get up on you, you'll be able to punch them. But this really caught me off guard, and I wasn't understanding why it changed. But it kind of changes into almost a side-scrolling shooting game in a way. So you actually have to throw these, through your throwables as your main way of attacking. Unless they get right up on you, then you can punch them. But that really caught me off guard, and it kind of transitioned without me realizing it for a minute. I was like, what is going on here? But look at that Christmas tree in the background. That is just beautiful. Great sprite work. Like I said, the graphics on this game are great. The sprites are nice and big and detailed. So it's really cool just what they were able to accomplish on the Super Nintendo. It's not graphically mind-blowing by any means, but for what it was, it looks fantastic. So you remember that scene in the movie where Batman rescues Michelle Pfeiffer, or Catwoman, from the clown by shooting his grapple gun into the concrete? He says, "You missed," and then he yanks it and yanks the concrete into the clown's head. I thought that was so cool back in the day. And then I got to this point in the game and I was like, oh, I recognize this. I wonder if I can grab my grapple gun. Sure enough, bam, yanked it right into his head. That was such a cool little Easter egg or detail that they added to this game that really caught me off guard. And it was really nice that they let me do that and just kind of recreate that scene from the movie. So cool. So this game actually lets you take control of the Batmobile as well, which was really cool to see. It puts you in this, kind of driving level where you're fighting, members of the Red Triangle Gang on their motorbikes, and it's basically just a driving shooting game at this point for this level, but it's great because it lets you break up kind of the routine and the kind of monotony of the other levels that you can kind of get sucked into. Just it breaks it up, and it's a nice addition. It kind of changes up the gameplay some. There's a lot of great things I can say about this game. It's a great and competent beat 'em up. It would have been cool if it had some form of co-op, but, Robin wasn't introduced in Batman Returns, so I don't know who you'd be partnering up with. Maybe you and Commissioner Gordon would be going on the streets fighting crime. That would be kind of odd. But anyways, I'm not going to talk about or show you every level in this game. It's something that you should experience for yourself. And this game is not expensive. If you want to try to grab it, it's definitely worth picking up. Or, if you need to emulate it or, grab it and play it on your Retron 5, anything like that. Fantastic game. And this game was actually released on multiple consoles, but each console version varied greatly. So the closest version to this game is actually going to be the NES version, which was actually also a side-scrolling beat-em-up. The NES version of this game is a lot like Battletoads on the NES. It's a very unforgiving beat-em-up, very difficult, Has great music though. While very different from the original NES version of Batman, still a great game and the closest thing to the Super Nintendo version. There was also a Sega Genesis version of this game, and it was pretty good. The colors are kind of drab, but really it's not a bad game. It is very difficult though, and it's worth checking out. It's definitely a good game. And it's like I said, all of these games offer such different experiences. It's really fun to go back and try them all. The Sega CD also had a version of this game, and they went a different approach for their version of this game. They did basically a driving game. You're driving in the Batmobile through Gotham City in different levels, using weapons and everything, and it was pretty cool. It had some really good cutscenes, and I think all in all, this was not a bad game, but just very different from the others. Batman was such a huge deal growing up between the toys. I mean, they had such a cool toy line. I had some of these as well. They were really cool. But between the toys and the movies and the games and everything you could think of, you could get Batman cereal and Batman McDonald's toys. It was a really cool time to grow up, especially if you're a Batman fan. There's just something really nice about the Tim Burton version and his take on this world and this character that I still really enjoy. And I think really there's so many good games from this time period that you could play and as we showed, they're all very different. They change drastically, their gameplay style and their looks and their music. But it's nice to go back and just try all these games if you have a way of doing that. But like I said, Batman Returns on the Super Nintendo was a great beat 'em up. And sometimes it's great. You know, we have these great Batman games these days with Arkham Asylum and Arkham Knight, Arkham City. But there's something special about going back and just playing these classic Batman games from back in the day. But anyways, these games will always hold a special place in my heart, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're a fan of Batman and, you know, enjoyed some of these older games, what was your favorite one? Like I said, we mentioned several in this video. Let me know in the comments section which one was your favorite, or if it's a modern day Batman game, you know, let me know. I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. See ya.